There's something to be said about projects that go for more than 6 years. I mean, how often is it that a game that you really love gets any more than even just a year or even 6 months of support? And even more so, just how often is it that that kind of support comes to your favorite games while not asking you for a penny more? No Man's Sky just crossed its 6th year of anniversary and crossed yet another round number milestone, that is the 4.0 Waypoint update. There was a lot going on for this update for something that doesn't have a whole lot of new content involved, but it definitely had a whole lot of work in it. In today's video, I want to review this 4.0 Waypoint update, one of the most controversial updates that we've gotten in No Man's Sky since the Beyond update, and let's just jump right into the pros. First off, I want to talk about the new game modes. This is a great addition because I think there was a lot of customization potential for No Man's Sky that hasn't been fully realized yet, and this was one of those things. A player that's new to the game, or somebody who has perhaps been put off by the game in the past due to some of its kind of annoying features or the game's grind that comes along with its gameplay loop, this is going to be a breath of fresh air for anybody that wants to come back or for new players. The strengthening and additions and changes to the survival mode is great for a player like me who really wants to have a challenge or customize my challenge a little bit further, something that I've been asking for quite a while, or for any other player who wants the same kind of experience but maybe not as grindy or maybe not as much of a chore for that kind of gameplay. The custom game modes really gives you an option to kind of customize the experience better tailored to how you would enjoy No Man's Sky. I think that's great. I almost put it as a con, but it really isn't. I know that there's actually some opportunity for this custom game mode type of thing to be exploitative, but if I were to complain about that on giving more customizable and easier modes to players new and existing, then that would go against my ideas of saying things like, hey, there should be an easy mode or a better experience for Dark Souls people to jump in and enjoy the game further. I don't want to say that No Man's Sky isn't for everyone. I do enjoy when developers go out of their way to present options to make a game more enjoyable for everybody that doesn't necessarily harm the core of the experience, and this kind of does that. The next item I want to talk about is the Nintendo Switch release. Now, this is not a review of the Nintendo Switch release. I do have the Switch. I have been playing it. I do have some impressions. It is very interesting that it runs as well as it does. I mean, it's not a technical marvel on the Switch. However, it is a miracle that a game like No Man's Sky can run on the Switch in the first place. And without bragging that I told you so throughout the years, because God knows I've done enough of that at the LZ tweets on Twitter, but Sean Murray in Hello Games has every right to brag that they spent the time to make a Switch port possible. That is some fine work. Again, it's not technically impressive. I mean, there's a lot of pop-in, there's a lot of things that maybe I would have done a little bit differently, but for all intents and purposes, it is No Man's Sky on the Nintendo Switch. And the last pro is obviously the most controversial one, and that's the inventory realignment. Now, this has been the liquid hot magma topic of the No Man's Sky community for existing players since the 4.0 update dropped. Now, I'm going to spoil this review a little bit and say that I have inventory and technology in both the pros and the cons. But as far as the inventory realignment, I think the inventory changes are very, very good. The reason being is that I think most of us can agree that having an inventory for your player, for your ship, for your freighter, and subsequent extra inventories and any other thing of the game can be a little overwhelming for anybody. And it's one of the common things that folks who have come to play No Man's Sky to give it a shot and have been turned off. No Man's Sky has a lot of inventory, a lot of items that maybe should see a snapping, and some of these extra things that really should just maybe be dealt with. A lot of unnecessary inventory, and while the studio might want to keep all of that inventory, these user interface changes are very welcome. It removes a lot of the arbitrary limitations on how much you can carry, and it puts all of that inventory on one screen. Before 4.0, to the uninitiated, every single inventory had like 2 or 3 sub inventories, and it was just a mess. It was tough to navigate. It was tough to find everything. And so somebody said, you know what? Why don't we just combine all of that? Let's remove technology from the inventory to a degree, and let's just let inventory be inventory. It's a little bit like Minecraft in a way, where, you just have your inventory, it's there, it's manageable, it lets you put more stuff into one slot, more stacking. It's something that should have been done a long time ago, honestly. And I really think objectively, No Man's Sky players, new and existing, can really get behind this change. I know there was a lot of griping on the scrolling aspect of that. There's a lot of potential to really grow how much inventory space you can have on any given object. So scrolling might be off-putting, but I think it's one of those things that we can get used to. It's the lesser of two evils there, and I think it's definitely okay. Now, let's get to the areas of opportunity. Let's get to the cons. Well, the pros and the cons, but a pro-con, so to speak. The technology changes are good in theory. As a matter of fact, I myself have said several times this year that a great change to technology would be to remove it from inventory altogether. That means that inventory and technology no longer have to share the same space. 4.0 Waypoint did that to a degree. However, it took a step forward and took 2 steps back, because when it removed technology and put it on its own section of the screen, that's great. However, it did set a lot of players back for their progress as far as time spent. I don't know of anybody that lost any of their work as far as some of the substance that came from that time spent, but it definitely was a bit of an inconvenience. Also, technology made a lot of changes as far as a big nerf goes. Now, I've seen this is actually the biggest and most controversial aspect of this update, is that what they did to technologies was essentially put an arbitrary cap on things to maybe in an effort to simplify them a little bit more. But what's curious is they give you up to 60 slots that you can eventually unlock, but I don't know that there's a lot of tech in the game, or enough tech in the game, to stack and upgrade that would really warrant that many slots. It's a really curious design change. Listen, I agree with the execution of this change. However, I don't agree with it as a solution. I think that, and this is gonna go away from the technology or the changes of the design philosophy of Hello Games, but I really, really think that inventory or technology should be removed at the inventory level entirely. And technology advancements and upgrades and modules really should be done at the equipment level. Like, I should be able to pick my exosuit. I should be able to pick my ship and then go in and tinker with it at an equipment level instead of an inventory level. And there's so much to be done and so much potential there. Just sort of imagine a sort of technology module / upgrade for a ship that's kind of built a little bit like Resident Evil 4's inventory system. Just imagine how beautiful that is, right? And engine upgrades and shield upgrades and all that come in different shapes and sizes, and you have to manage these things again at the equipment level. I feel like that something like that would be a very awesome metagame. It would be just an extra excellent compromise for having to deal with this. And I honestly have to say, I love that we're bringing in new players and we're trying to bring back old players that have kind of been put off by No Man's Sky's general systems. However, that should not come at the expense of the min-maxer, the person who really wants to blow up their tech, blow up their equipment. I don't really see the technology changes in 4.0 as a good compromise. Again, good in execution because it simplified the user interface, it simplified the concept. This is a better change than what it was before, aside from the nerfing of how much tech and upgrades you can invest into your tech. I do say this with a caveat. One of my friends on Twitter, I forget right off the top of my head who said it, but somebody said that this could be a change for a future update that's coming to make big changes to technology. That's speculation and conjecture, of course, but there's a degree of agreement that I have with some of the community that perhaps maybe that should be communicated. Someone from Hello Games should say, hey, we made these changes in favor of a possible upcoming update. More to come. I am perfectly fine with that. Technology could be better. It's not at its best right now, but I think it is definitely a better idea now than what we've had before. Just let me upgrade further than what I can now, because this doesn't help much. Next area of opportunity is around quality of life. This is a very quality of life focus, and I would be more frustrated with this had Hello Games not given the sort of guidance on the fact that we want to try to answer to prayers and thoughts and feedback and things like that for people who wanted No Man's Sky to be a certain thing and was just put off by it. With No Man's Sky having launched now on virtually every platform, RIP Stadia, it is great that they try to bring in new players and attract new players based on making the universal user interface a better, more attractive idea for people. Reviewers like me might be helping sell people on that concept. This might very well sound very good to people who are watching this review who have never played No Man's Sky or played it 5 years ago and it just wasn't their cup of tea. However, trying to be as objective as possible, I do not know that the changes that were made with these quality of life improvements will really move that needle all that much. You see, the quality of life changes that come from inventory, the technology changes, all of the other little things that they did mostly just sort of moved the mess from one place to another. I don't know that it does a whole lot. I don't get that overwhelming sense that it's mission accomplished here, which I think is okay to a degree. Like if at some point, Hello Games can just admit that, you know what, the quality of life is there. Let's focus on new content now. That's something I said earlier this year, that I don't think the game needs more quality of life improvements after 2022's updates, right? I feel like, personally, from my perspective, a reviewer and longtime coverer of No Man's Sky, that the quality of life is really in a good place. I know I said earlier that the inventory was just kind of a jumbled mess. The inventory changes have been really good. I think the best aspect of this update, other than the new game modes, I'm glad they paid attention to that stuff. And then finally, the biggest con, the biggest area of opportunity, my biggest disappointment with the 4.0 update was not that it was a lack of actual new content to the game or that it was a continued quality of life. Those are all great, and that feedback is very minimal based on, other than the technology changes. I think they could do more there. But my biggest disappointment with 4.0, No Man's Sky exists on virtually every platform, like I said earlier. Right now, there is no excuse for not having some kind of cross-save and cross-progression. I'd like to hear from you in the chat if you're still watching. Do you have multiple platforms that you could feasibly and usably have a cross-save and cross-progression system? I own No Man's Sky on every platform that I own. I have PS5, I have Xbox Series X, and I have Nintendo Switch and PC, and I personally could find use in having a save that I can carry between those platforms. Because believe it or not, I do play on most of those platforms. I don't play on Xbox Series X because, I've got PS5 and PC for that. However, I do find use in being able to pick up and play on the Switch. Cross-save and cross-progression could have absolutely benefited to launch with this update alongside the Switch. Now, I know they're a tiny team. I could see you writing that comment already. And there are hints, or at least evidence, that they might be working on that. Things like being able to name your save games now, that could be a hint. And Nintendo's own website also talked about the possibility. But I think it's really, really time, now that it's basically existing on every platform that can support the game at this point, other than the PlayStation Vita, I'm manifesting. Would really like to see that soon too. My fellow travelers, what do you think of the 4.0 Waypoint update? Would love to hear your thoughts, both here in the comments. Like the video if this was a useful review for you. Thank you very much, and love to see you on Twitter at the LZ Tweets. Check the description. And as always, see you in the very next one.